Hey guys, and welcome to this video. Today I want to be talking through how to ride a dirt bike from a beginner perspective. I learned to ride dirt bikes right here on YouTube, so I want to talk you through basically the basics of how to ride a dirt bike and some of the things that I think will be really helpful that I learned when I was first learning to ride. So we're going to jump straight in if that's okay. So first off, I want to go over controls of the bike. So on the left hand side of the bike we've got some controls that we need to be aware of. So first off, on the left hand side here, we've got the foot peg, left foot peg, and then the gear selector. So this here is what we're going to be using to select gears. I'll go through the gear selection in a little bit more detail in a minute, but that's your gear selector. Up here we've got the choke for the bike, so we're going to need this when we're starting. So on the inside here you'll be able to see a little yellow knob, and that's the choke. You pull it out and push it in. Pull it out is engaging the choke. Up on the handlebars we've got a few more controls. Left hand side we've got the clutch, and then this little red button here is the cut off for the bike, so we press that to cut the bike off. On the right hand side of the bike we've got our front brake, so we've got a front brake here. This is the mass cylinder for the front brake. On this bike here we do have another button on this side, and this selects the map for the bike, so it has 3 map settings for different power outputs. A lot of bikes, well, some bikes will, some bikes won't have that. Not too important for the basics. Down here on the right hand side we've got obviously the right foot peg, and then this is your rear brake on the right hand side, so your rear brake is foot operated. And then last off we've got here, which is the kickstart for the bike. Okay, so we've been through the controls of the bike. Next up we want to talk about positioning on the bike. So we've got 2 positions on the bike. The main position we're going to be in when we're learning to ride a dirt bike is a sat down position. Okay, the reason for that is it's more stable for kind of new riders. You've got more to grip onto and you're not having to think about balancing quite as much. When you're sat on a dirt bike, you want to be sort of slightly more towards the front of the seat, with your weight going kind of down towards through the foot pegs. What I see a lot of new riders doing is they'll be sat back here in this position, and the weight's right over the back wheel, and it can cause all kinds of problems with the bike kind of wanting to kick up and wheelie on you, which you don't want when you're learning to ride. So yeah, weight further forward, and then your stood up position, you're going to be just off the ball with your feet slightly further back, with your weight going through your foot pegs, with your knees bent. Okay, again, the weight going through the centre of the bike, and you're going to be gripping with the insides of your legs here. You're not going to be leaning your weight through the bars. All of your weight is going to be distributed through the bike, and then you're going to be able to have a loose grip on the bars. Okay guys, so we've talked about position of the bike, so next we're ready to start the bike. The first thing we need to do before starting the bike is make sure the bike is in neutral. Okay, if we try and kick the bike over in its gear, the bike's going to want to go, and that's obviously not good. So first off, we need to make sure we're in neutral, so we're going to be going to the gear selector, and what I'll be doing is I'll be pulling the clutch in on the handlebar on the top left here, so pulling the clutch in, and then I'll be finding neutral. So neutral will be all the way down, so I'm actually in first gear here, and then I'm going to go half a click upwards. So now we're in neutral in the bike, so we're in between first and second gear. Now we're ready to kick the bike over. So the kick starts round the other side. So on the right side we're going to be pulling the kickstart out into this position. It's best to be stood up for this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cycle the bike through once and then listen for it to click back up again until I'm right at the very top and I can feel it's engaged at the very top of the bike. Some bikes you need to start with the cylinder in a certain position. This bike can start at any position, but I want to make sure I've got the kickstart fully engaged so I can give a really good smooth kick through to start the bike. When I'm kicking in a slightly curved direction, so I'm actually kicking down like this rather than just straight down, but either's fine. So you want to be basically kicking a swift movement kind of down and back. Okay, so now we've learned how to start the bike, we need to get the bike off the stand and learn how to kind of take off on the bike. So we're going to get the bike off, and kind of the next thing we're going to be doing is starting the bike and learning to pull away. Okay, now this is probably one of the hardest things to learn. Dirt bikes, particularly motocross bikes, can have quite a snappy clutch, and when you're taking off for the first time there's a real risk of doing something called whiskey throttling. I'm just going to briefly talk about what that is, because I did it when I first learned to ride. It's a little bit scary and you can hurt yourself doing it. So when you're taking off on the bike, you're going to be in first gear, okay, and then you're going to be letting the clutch out and balancing it with a bit of throttle. But what often happens when you're taking off is your weight will shift backwards and you'll wind more throttle on, and that can cause the bike to flip out. So it's really worth doing a few drills, just learning how the bike bites and starts to take off before you actually take off for the first time. So what I definitely recommend you doing is starting the bike and then just practicing feeling that bite point and stopping and not taking off, just feeling that bite point and learning a bit of muscle memory of pulling the clutch back in, feeling the bite point and pulling the clutch back in again. I'll just show you what that looks like briefly. So what we're doing there is we're building that muscle memory to kind of let the clutch out slowly, feel the bite of the bike and then pull it back in again. And you really want to learn that pulling the clutch back in again if you kind of feel in danger in any way. Because if you start whiskey throttling, if you manage to pull your clutch in, it's going to stop the bike flipping out on you. Yeah, winding the throttle off will as well, but it's kind of quite a lot harder to do when your weight's shifted back, whereas putting the clutch in is relatively easy to do. So that's a really good thing to kind of drill before you start taking off on the bike for the first time. Okay, so we've learned how to take off on the bike now, so we basically need to learn how to change gear. So when we first take off, we're going to be in first gear, so we're going to be down all the way, and then we want to change gear, we want to go up into second gear. So we're going to be putting the clutch in, okay, and then we're going to be clicking a whole click upwards. So we've gone past neutral at half a click and we're into second gear now, and then again we're going to be slowly letting our clutch out, the same as if we were taking off. So slowly letting the clutch out, and then the same when we're changing into third gear, we're going up again, so clutch in, and then we're going to be going up into third gear and then releasing and then slowly letting the clutch out. To go back down, we're doing just the reverse. Okay, so we're pulling the clutch in, but we're pressing down on the gear selector and then gently letting the clutch out again until we want to go back down into neutral. So we go back all the way down into first, and then we go half click up again, and then we're into neutral. Okay guys, so we've been through the basics of how to ride a dirt bike. Now you're ready for a shreddy. Make sure you've got a helmet on. I generally recommend wearing some boots if you can, and then it's just about wide open spaces, practicing